oftentimes the things that we think we need to work on are things that we need to work on less, and the things that we don't even consider are actually the things that we should be focusing on. Hey guys, Greg Chaplin here, physical therapist and strength and conditioning specialist. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 most common rehab mistakes that I see, and then some solutions that you can implement to not make these mistakes and increase the probability of success within your rehab or training programs. Now, before we get started, I should mention that this does not only apply to rehab, this can also apply to training and really many other things in life. And this is not an exhaustive list. So these are just the top 5 that I thought of for this video. We could probably do another video or 2 with another 5 or 10. And lastly, before we get into the video, if you are making these mistakes, don't feel bad about it. The reason that I know about these mistakes, aside from seeing clients and patients make these mistakes, is that I've also made these mistakes myself. What's important is that we learn from these mistakes and then grow within a rehab or training process. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, first on our list of most common mistakes is putting all the attention on exercise and not much attention on anything else. So yes, within a rehab or training program, the exercises that you're doing and how you're doing those exercises are extremely important, but they're not the whole picture. And I made this mistake for a long time, but a few of the things that you need to focus on aside from exercise might be things like recovery and your lifestyle, your mental and spiritual health, or something like your interpersonal relationships and your day-to-day routines and how that's impacting your health and ability to go through your rehab and training programs. So if you're that person who's only focused on what exercises to do and how to do them, take a step back and look at those other factors, and I think you're going to find that you have an increased probability of success. Now, number 2 on our list of most common rehab mistakes is changing exercises too often. Now, I've certainly made this mistake, and I've had many patients and clients who have also fallen into this trap. And what we're usually doing here is we're searching for that perfect exercise or position or movement that's going to give us, we think, that magic solution that we need. But ultimately what this does is it stops us from being able to progress. So usually we're chasing novelty, and then going from one exercise to the next gives us this illusion of progression, when really what we'd be better off doing is sticking with a few core movements and then progressing them meticulously over time, because now we'll have less variables to actually control, and we can work on things like increasing reps, increasing the weight or range of motion, or any of the other variables that we might be looking at within the context of a rehab or a training program. So if you're someone that feels like you've been making this mistake, you want to have someone help you to identify a small number of movements that will work well for your body and well with what you're going through, but then you want to progress those instead of just jumping from one exercise to the next. If you're finding this video useful so far, consider liking this video, leave me any questions you have down below in the comments, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. All these things help the algorithm to help me help more people. So now moving on to number 3 on our list, this ties into number 2, and that's changing coaches, trainers, or therapists too frequently. Now, I should say that sometimes it is necessary to change trainers, coaches, or therapists, especially if they have some sort of a dogmatic philosophy that they're projecting onto you. But in the vast majority of cases, if they're a good communicator and they're open-minded, this is going to be less about changing that trainer, coach, or therapist, and it's going to be more about developing a process together that will enhance the probability of success over the long term. Now, I think the reason that we often fall into this trap, and I know this is certainly true for me, is that we're looking for that next trainer, coach, or therapist that has a different approach, because we have this belief that that magic solution is out there, that the reason this person couldn't help us is something to do with them or their approach, rather than something to do with us as the person who's going through the process of rehab or training. Now, in my experience, if we're interacting with coaches, therapists, and trainers, and we're going through many different individuals and we still have a lack of results relative to our goals, it's likely that the issue is less with them or the approach, and it's more likely that the issue is with us and our awareness of how we're interacting with those individuals within this process of rehab or training. I would say that about 9 times out of 10, it's some sort of a simple mindset type adjustment that needs to be made. And usually we need to think about what our core beliefs are around training and what the process of rehab or training means. And if we can adjust those and communicate a little bit better, usually we can increase the probability of getting the outcome that we want. Now, this leads us right to number 4 on our list, which is expecting a perfect outcome or focusing too much on the outcome or a certain time frame of achieving that outcome. So yes, most of us get into rehab or training because we're looking to achieve a certain goal. This could be losing weight, or this could be rehabbing an injury so that we can get back to a certain activity. But when we put that pressure on the outcome, a lot of times it detracts from our attention on the parts of the process that are actually going to make the difference and result in that outcome being achieved. Now, this outcome dependence can also increase the perception of threat within the body. So if we're trying to rehab and pain is a prominent feature of our presentation, this is probably counterproductive. And many times this goes along with focusing too much on how we feel and not enough on what we're able to do. So a lot of times we're waiting until we feel good to be able to do certain things instead of doing them and trusting that we'll feel better doing those things over time. So for example, if we wanted to get back to a certain sport or hiking, what we want to do is we want to start to take steps towards those activities and be okay with not feeling 100% good doing them in the first place, but then trust that over time, with the right sort of training and rehab approaches and exposure, that we will get back to being able to enjoy those activities while feeling good. A lot of times we think about this in the inverse, but when we can make that little mindset shift, focus more on what we can do rather than how we feel, we can often let go of that outcome dependence, not expect that perfect outcome. And then in the end, we often get closer to that perfect outcome a lot faster than if we were thinking about it from the opposite way. Now, last but not least on our list, number 5 is trying to do it on your own. And I know a lot of you watching this YouTube channel are probably trying to do it on your own. I don't blame you. That's exactly what I did. I went and became a trainer and then went back to school and got my doctorate in physical therapy. And even after all that training and experience, I still couldn't fix my body or rehab myself to my satisfaction. And ultimately, I had to reach out and work with someone that I respected. And once I did that, I started to get the results that I wanted. Now, when you're trying to do it on your own, there's a lot of problems that are associated with that, which is that it activates the overthinking brain, which can ultimately increase threat in the body and can enhance pain and unpleasant sensations. This oftentimes also contributes to changing the plan frequently or chasing that perfect solution rather than sticking to a plan. And it also doesn't control for our biases. So humans are pretty terrible at knowing what they need to work on. Oftentimes the things that we think we need to work on are things that we need to work on less, and the things that we don't even consider are actually the things that we should be focusing on. And the net result of all this is often that it increases self-pressure and feelings of negativity. So even if you're a rehab professional like me, the best thing to do is to reach out to someone who you can work with, who's going to be open-minded and a good communicator, who can work with you to develop a realistic plan that's going to work over the long term. So now the big picture with all these mistakes is that we need to stop looking for that perfect solution, provider, or approach. And instead, we need to find that person who's open-minded and who can communicate with us and can help us make that plan that's customized to our needs, but then can keep us accountable to progress that over time and not get derailed by any of these common mistakes. If you do that, taking consistently imperfect action over time, working with someone who can help you control for your own biases and keep you on track, you're ultimately going to increase the probability of success with your rehab or training programs. Okay, so that does it for this video. As always, thanks a bunch for watching, and until next time, peace.